They say nothing bad ever happens in Marrow Creek. They also say that about every town that has a dollar store, a diner with one working coffee machine, and a local newspaper running on caffeine and nostalgia. But if there's one thing I've learned in 6 years of covering lost dogs, pothole arguments, and county fair pie contests, it's this: nothing good happens in places that brag about being safe. I'm Miles Archer, reporter, editor, and part-time janitor of the Marrow Creek Gazette. Circulation: your grandma and the guy who delivers propane. My boss, who's also me, insists on keeping the tagline, "Keeping the Creek Clean Since 1957," which is ironic considering half the town's secrets could clog a sewer. When I walked into the office that Monday morning, the air already smelled of printer ink, coffee grounds, and the faint musk of defeat. I was halfway through rewriting an article about a tractor parade when the police scanner crackled to life. Unit 3, possible 1054 on County Road 8. Vehicles off the shoulder. One occupant requesting backup. A 1054. Dead body. Now that's something new. Around here, news usually means a cow wandered into someone's yard. A body, though? That's front page. Maybe even page 2 if we're feeling fancy. I grabbed my camera, still sticky from a pie-eating contest last month, and drove my 12-year-old pickup toward County Road 8, where civilization gave up and the cornfields took over. The morning mist hung low, blurring the trees into gray ghosts. I rolled down the window and lit a cigarette. The smoke tasted like anticipation and guilt. When I got there, the sheriff's cruiser was already parked at an angle, lights flashing lazily as if bored. Sheriff Tom Lacey leaned against the hood, arms crossed, talking to his deputy. Lacey was one of those men who looked carved from leftover lumber, square, solid, and a little splintery. He spotted me and groaned. "Miles, Jesus Christ, you smell news before it's cold, don't you?" "I try," I said, clicking my camera. "How cold are we talking?" "Cold enough." He nodded toward a dented red Chevy by the ditch. The windshield was spiderwebbed, door half open. A man sat slumped over the steering wheel like he'd just taken a nap at 60 miles per hour. Except naps don't usually leave your neck looking like that. The guy's throat had been opened clean. No jagged panic cuts, just a single smooth line, neat as surgery. Blood had pooled under him and soaked into the dusty floor mats. The sheriff's deputy was trying not to throw up into a plastic bag. "Jesus," I muttered. "Car accident, huh?" Lacey shot me a look. "You print that before I give a statement, I'll make sure your next headline reads, 'Local man found in ditch.'" "Relax, Sheriff. Just asking questions." "Yeah, and I'm just telling you not to." He walked toward the road to talk to someone on the radio, leaving me with the dead man. I took a closer look. Middle-aged, flannel shirt, calloused hands, a small wedding ring, wallet on the passenger seat, no sign of struggle. Whoever did it wanted him to be found. Lacey came back after a few minutes, rubbing his jaw. "Name's Glenn Walters. Worked over at the grain mill. His wife called in around 6 saying he never came home last night." I raised an eyebrow. "Any idea who'd want to carve him like a Thanksgiving ham?" He'd, "Don't know yet. You'll know when I do." "Fair enough," I said, scribbling in my notebook. "You mind if I quote you on that?" He groaned again. "Miles, for once in your miserable life, keep your pen in your pants." By the time I got back to town, word had already spread faster than a church rumor. The diner was buzzing. Old men with weathered hands stirred their coffee with the same spoons they'd used for 40 years, talking low. Every booth whispered about Glenn, the man who fixed their fence, sold them feed, or dated their cousin once. In Marrow Creek, everyone's cousin dated someone. I sat at the counter. Mary, the waitress, poured me coffee with the same enthusiasm as a funeral dirge. "You hear about Glenn?" she asked. "Hard not to," I said. "Heard they found him on County 8. Neck cut clean through," she said it, like she was reading a weather report. Poor Janet. She just put up new curtains last month. "Tragic," I said, sipping. "Do you happen to know anyone who'd hate Glenn enough to redecorate his jugular?" She frowned. "Miles, you're sick. I'm just thorough." She didn't laugh. Nobody ever does. After breakfast, I drove to the Walters house, a single-story place with more lawn guams than self-respect. Yellow tape fluttered across the porch. Janet Walters sat on the steps, smoking like it was her new religion. Her eyes were red, but not from crying, more like she'd stared at something too long and it stared back. "Mrs. Walters," I said gently. "Miles Arger, Gazette." She gave me a sideways glance. "I told the cops everything already." "I'm not a cop. I'm worse. I ask follow-ups." That got a tiny, bitter smile. "You got 5 minutes." She told me Glenn left the bar around 9:30 last night after 2 beers and some small talk about crop prices. Said he wasn't much of a drinker, never got in trouble, didn't have enemies, unless you count the folks at the grain mill. Apparently layoffs were coming and Glenn wasn't shy about speaking up. "You think that's related?" I asked. She shrugged. "I think this town's been rotting for years. Maybe it finally noticed." Her words stuck with me all the way back to the office. Marrow Creek always had that kind of rot, the invisible kind, that smelled faintly of diesel and regret. Everyone here was too polite to say it out loud, but we all knew it. The town wasn't dying, it was being slowly murdered, one foreclosure and overdose at a time. I typed up the article by noon. "Local man found dead in apparent homicide." I kept it clean, factual, and mildly unsettling, just how the Gazette liked it. Circulation jumped by 7 copies that day. A record. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Glenn's open throat, that perfect red line. Something about it didn't fit. No blood spatter on the dashboard, no sign of panic. Whoever did it wasn't just calm, they were careful. The next morning, Lacey called me into his office. "You got a minute?" he said, which translated means, "I'm about to tell you something I shouldn't." He shut the door and tossed a folder on the desk. Inside were photos, crime scene close-ups. I'd seen my share of ugly things, but these were deliberate. Glenn's cut was too clean, like a butcher's hand, like someone who'd done it before. "Autopsy says the blade went in from the left," Lacey said. "Strong hand, precise angle." "Any suspects?" "Maybe. But here's the weird part," he leaned in. 2 years ago, a guy named Darrell Hunt turned up dead out by the quarry. Same kind of cut. We wrote it off as suicide. Now, I'm not so sure." I frowned. "Why show me this?" "Because you're going to write about it anyway," he said. "Might as well get the story right." That night, I dug through old Gazette archives. The Darrell Hunt case was buried between a school bake sale and a feature on the county fair. Found dead in his truck, left-handed wound, ruled self-inflicted. No one questioned it. Why would they? This town swallows questions like mud. I drove out to the quarry just before sunset. The air smelled metallic, like blood and rain. The place was abandoned now, just a pit full of still water and broken equipment. I parked by the old fence and stared at the reflection of the sky bleeding into the water. That's when I saw something nailed to a nearby post. A Polaroid. It was a photo of Glenn Walters, sitting in his truck, head slumped, before the cops even got there. The picture was grainy, but it was definitely him. On the back, scrawled in neat black marker, were 3 words. "Tell the truth." I froze. The air felt heavier, like the world had paused to see what I'd do next. Someone had been there before me. Someone who knew exactly what happened and wanted me to keep digging. I pocketed the photo and drove back to town, headlights slicing through the dark. Every mailbox, every streetlight, every porch felt like an eye watching. When I reached my office, the front door was already open. Inside, the computer was on. The article draft I'd written that morning had been edited. New text at the bottom, typed in bold. Next one's on you, Miles. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Then, from somewhere outside, I heard a car engine idle.
You know that feeling when you realize you might be the punchline to a joke you didn't know existed? That's where I was, standing in my dark office, staring at a computer screen that said, "Next one's on you, Miles." I looked around, half expecting some cackling movie villain to pop out from behind the filing cabinet. Nothing. Just the buzz of the fluorescent lights and the smell of printer toner. Familiar. Suffocating. Whoever did this didn't take anything, didn't break in, just left a message, like a cat dropping a dead bird on your doorstep. A gift. I shut down the computer, locked the door, and drove home. My house sat on the edge of town. Cheap rent, bad insulation, and a porch that creaked like an old man's knees. I poured a whiskey, lit a cigarette, and tried to convince myself this was all an elaborate prank. Small-town journalists aren't exactly high-value targets, unless someone really hated my coverage of the county bake sale. Sleep didn't come easy. Every sound felt suspicious. The fridge humming, wind nudging the shutters, the occasional car passing by too slow. Around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off, only to dream about Glenn Walter's face pressed against glass, mouthing something I couldn't hear. The next morning, Sheriff Lacey showed up at the Gazette. He didn't bother knocking. "Miles," he said, stepping in like he owned the place, "you didn't happen to go sightseeing out by the quarry last night, did you?" I sipped my coffee, trying to look casual. "Sightseeing? Me? I can barely afford gas to get to work." He squinted. "Funny, because someone saw your pickup parked there around sundown. Maybe it was my evil twin. He's more outdoorsy." He sighed. "This isn't a joke. You know how it looks when a reporter pokes around an active investigation. Curious, like he's doing his job. Miles, look, Tom, if you're suggesting I had something to do with Glenn's throat problem, I'd like to remind you I have trouble opening envelopes." He wasn't laughing. "You got any enemies?" "Only readers." He rubbed his temples. "Keep your nose clean, Miles. I mean it." After he left, I sat in silence, staring at the typewriter I used for headlines when the power went out. Enemies? I'd written my fair share of unflattering columns, but none worth murder. The worst I'd gotten was a nasty letter from the church about calling their bake sale a diabetes festival. Still, someone wanted me involved. I drove to the grain mill after lunch. The air there always smelled like dust and diesel. A few men were standing by the loading dock, smoking and pretending to work. When they saw me, their conversation dried up faster than the beer at closing time. "Hey, fellas," I said, "just checking in about Glenn Walters." One of them, a big guy in overalls, spat on the ground. "We already talked to the sheriff." "Yeah, well, I'm not the sheriff. I'm the guy who makes him look bad when he misses something." That earned a chuckle from the skinny one beside him. "You're that newspaper guy, right? Archer?" "Guilty," I said. "Any idea who'd want Glenn dead?" "Depends. You asking for the paper or for yourself?" That tone, the kind that smells like gasoline before a match. For the paper. He shrugged. Glenn was a good worker. Kept to himself mostly, but he was running his mouth lately. Said the company was shorting hours, cutting corners. Thought he was going to blow the whistle. Blow the whistle to who? The sheriff? Don't know. Maybe to you. That gave me pause. To me? He nodded. Said he was thinking about bringing something down to the Gazette. Proof or whatever. I stared at him. When was this? Day before he died. Back in my truck, I stared through the windshield, the weight of that sinking in. Glenn was going to talk to me. About what? Corruption? Cover-ups? Maybe someone didn't want that story printed. When I got back to the office, there was an envelope sitting under the door. No name, no address, just 2 Miles Archer, written in neat handwriting. Inside were 3 things. A flash drive, a note that said you wanted the truth, and a Polaroid of me sitting in my truck that morning at the grain mill. I froze. My stomach sank somewhere near my knees. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching me. They were close. Close enough to follow, to photograph, to drop things off without being seen. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. It contained 1 video file, time-stamped from the night Glenn died. Grainy dash-cam footage. Glenn driving down County Road 8. A pair of headlights behind him. He slows, pulls over, rolls down the window. The other car stops beside him. You can't see the driver, just a dark outline leaning in. Then Glenn jerks. Blood splatters. The knife flashes once. The killer steps back, calm, wipes the blade on a rag, and walks back to their car. The camera catches their face for a split second as they pass the headlights. Sheriff Tom Lacey. I hit pause. My brain refused to process. I played it again. Same thing. Lacey's face, clear as daylight. Unless someone was wearing a mask, which was possible, I guess, but this was no Halloween prank. The note's words rang in my head. You wanted the truth. I closed the laptop and poured another drink. If that video was real, I was sitting on something nuclear. If it wasn't, someone was trying really hard to frame the only man in town who still had a badge and half a conscience. And either way, someone was watching me watch it. I needed air. I went to the diner, my default panic shelter. The place was half empty, except for Mary and a few farmers discussing weather conspiracies. She gave me a look when I sat down. You look like hell, she said. I've been promoted. From reporter to target. She blinked. Target? Forget it. I'm just having a day. As I stirred my coffee, I noticed a white pickup parked across the street. Tinted windows, engine idling, no driver visible. It stayed there for 10 minutes. I pretended not to notice, but my hand shook every time I lifted the cup. When I finally walked out, the truck was gone. Just tire marks and paranoia left behind. That night I didn't go home. I drove to a motel 2 towns over, a place that smelled like bleach and heartbreak. I locked the door, double-checked the window, and watched the video again. Then again. Each time that face looked more like Lacey's, calm, collected, efficient. Not the man who swore by procedure and drank black coffee like holy water. Could he be the killer, or was I being played? At 2 a.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Silence. Then a familiar voice. Miles, we need to talk. Lacey? Not over the phone. Meet me at the bridge by Miller's Pond. Half an hour. Click. I sat there staring at the phone, every instinct screaming, don't go. But curiosity has always been my worst addiction. That and bourbon. The bridge was deserted when I got there. The pond reflected the moonlight in dull silver ripples. My breath fogged in the cold. I kept my headlights on, partly to see, mostly to scare off whatever raccoon gods ruled the night. Then, footsteps. Lacey stepped out of the shadows, hat pulled low, face unreadable. "You came?" I called. That's how it works. He looked around nervously. "You got something you shouldn't?" "Oh, you mean a front row seat to your late night hobbies?" His eyes narrowed. "You think I killed Glenn?" "I think your face is all over a video that says you did." He froze. For a moment, all I heard was wind and the creak of the bridge. Then softly, "They got to you too?" "Who's they?" He didn't answer, just stared past me at the woods, like expecting someone to step out. "Miles, that footage isn't real. I swear on my badge. They're setting me up. And if you don't stop digging, they'll set you up next." I'm touched by the concern, but you'll forgive me if I don't take ethics lessons from a man whose face is trending in my nightmares. He took a step forward, voice low. "You want the truth? Start at the mill. There's more going on there than you know. Glenn found proof, but it wasn't about layoffs. It was about..." A gunshot cracked through the night. Lacey jerked back, eyes wide, a red bloom spreading across his shirt. He collapsed against the railing.
You ever have one of those moments where your brain tries to do math it was never built for? Like, if my boss just died and my computer is typing messages by itself, how screwed am I on a scale from 1 to existential crisis? That was me, sitting in my empty newsroom at 2 in the morning, staring at the words warehouse.move on the screen. The last time curiosity got the better of me, a man's throat was open in a Chevy. The time before that, someone left a Polaroid like a calling card. So naturally, I clicked it. The video opened with shaky footage, someone walking through a dimly lit warehouse, flashlight beam jittering over crates stacked to the ceiling, each one stamped with the same label, "Property of Merrow County Agri-Processing." Then the light stopped on something else, rows of black barrels, unmarked except for a single white stencil. D12. The person filming pried one open with a crowbar. The lid popped, releasing a chemical hiss. Inside, something thick and dark, swirling, almost oily. Then the camera turned, and for 1 second I saw a face reflected in the flashlight beam. Glenn Walters. Alive. Terrified. He whispered something, barely audible. "They're dumping it in the creek." Then the video cut to static. I sat back, heart hammering. Dumping it in the creek. Merrow Creek, the one we drink from, fish from, named the damn town after. I opened the drawer where I keep the old police scanner, turned it on, and waited. Nothing but static and the occasional dispatch about a loose cow. Whatever was going on, it was buried deep. Lacey had said the mill was hiding something, and Glenn had found proof. Now both were dead. So, yeah, naturally, I decided to go there next. Because who needs survival instincts when you've got journalistic integrity and crippling loneliness? The grain mill sat on the outskirts of town, have its windows boarded up, humming faintly like it was dreaming of better days. I parked behind the silos, flashlight in one hand, recorder in the other. The main door was locked, but the side entrance had a padlock so old it could have been defeated by a strong opinion. Inside, the air was thick, metallic, sour, wrong. I stepped carefully, following the sound of a low hum deeper into the dark. The warehouse was exactly like the video. Crates stacked in uneven towers, black barrels with white stencils, D12. I unscrewed one just enough to catch a whiff. The smell hit like a brick wall. Chemical, rotten, unnatural. I gagged and stumbled back, the taste burning my tongue. That's when a voice came from behind me. "Looking for something, Miles?" I froze. Janet Walter stepped out from behind a crate holding a flashlight. She looked calmer than any widow should. In her other hand, a pistol. "Janet," I said carefully, raising my palms, "I was, just fact-checking." She smiled, didn't reach her eyes. "You shouldn't have opened that barrel." Well, in my defense, I open a lot of things I shouldn't. Emails, beers, moral wounds. Shut up. She came closer, the beam of her flashlight slicing across my face. "You saw the video? Warehouse.move? Yeah, Oscar-worthy stuff." She nodded slowly. "Glenn filmed that. He found out the mill was dumping chemical waste into the creek. Old government contracts, fake paperwork, all signed off on by people who don't exist anymore. When he told me, I said to keep quiet, but he couldn't help himself. He wanted to go public. And then he wound up in a ditch," I said. She didn't deny it. "Was it you?" She sighed. "You think I'd slit my husband's throat? No, I loved Glenn, but the people he worked for didn't. When he came to you, they panicked. Lacey was on their payroll to clean it up. He was supposed to make it look like an accident. When he hesitated..." She trailed off, eyes flickering. "They shot him too." I felt my mouth go dry. "And you?" "I took the video, and the flash drive. I thought if I sent it to you, you'd publish it, expose them, make them burn. Congratulations, you've successfully made me the next dead guy on their list." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "You already were." Something clanged in the distance, metal against metal. Janet turned her head sharply, gun raised. "Who's there?" Silence. Then footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate. A figure emerged from the dark, flashlight beam cutting through dust. Deputy Harris, Lacey's second in command. "Good evening," he said casually, as if we just run into each other at the diner. "You two sure picked the wrong night to play detective." He had his sidearm drawn, steady as a statue. Janet's gun wavered slightly. "You bastard! You killed Tom." Harris shrugged. "Tom stopped being useful. You know how it is. Too much conscience, not enough overtime." He looked at me next. "And Miles here? Well, you made yourself famous." I tried to keep my voice steady. "So, what's the plan? 2 more bodies and another cover-up?" He smiled thinly. "Nah, this time it's simpler. Fire. Electrical fault. Local reporter and grieving widow caught trespassing. Tragic, really." Then he raised the gun. Janet fired first. The sound shattered the air, echoing off the walls. Harris dropped behind a crate, returned fire. Sparks danced across the metal. I dove behind a forklift, adrenaline roaring in my ears. "Janet!" I yelled. No answer. Just smoke and the smell of burning oil. When I peeked out, Harris was down, bleeding, breathing, but alive. Janet was lying face down, motionless, a dark pool spreading beneath her. I crawled to her side, shaking. "Janet, hey, hey!" Her eyes flickered open, unfocused. She pressed something into my hand, a folded piece of paper, then exhaled one long, trembling breath. Gone. I unfolded the note with shaking fingers. Coordinates. A location on the edge of town. I looked back. Harris was moving again, groaning, hand reaching for his gun. I didn't wait to see if he made it. I ran. By dawn, I reached the coordinates, an old barn near the edge of the creek. The water glimmered faintly in the first light. Calm, beautiful, and if Glenn was right, poisoned. Inside the barn were more barrels, dozens of them, Some split open, leaking black sludge into the dirt. The smell was unbearable. Flies swarmed the corners like a living shadow. I took photos, hundreds of them. Evidence, proof, enough to bury every man in this town who'd sold their soul for a government contract. When I turned to leave, I noticed something on the ground. A box of files, labeled Project D12. I opened it. Inside were reports, dates, signatures. The company had been dumping experimental byproducts for years, stuff that wasn't supposed to exist outside of military labs. They'd falsified inspection results, bribed officials, and used the creek to wash away the evidence. And right there, on the last page, a signature I recognized. Thomas Lacey. But underneath, someone else's. Miles Archer. I froze. It was my name, my signature. Same handwriting, same stroke, forged or maybe copied from something. My stomach twisted. Whoever orchestrated this had planned it down to the last detail. Glenn, Lacey, Janet, they were all cleanup jobs, and I was next on their list. Footsteps behind me. Slow. Heavy. I turned. Deputy Harris, pale and limping, framed in the doorway. Blood down his sleeve, eyes wild. "You shouldn't have come here," he rasped. "Yeah, I'm starting to get that a lot." He raised the gun. Click. Empty. I didn't wait for a second try. I swung the camera at his face. It connected with a dull thud, and he went down hard. I ran out the door, down the slope toward the creek. Behind me, the barn crackled, flames licking up the walls. Somehow, the bastard had lit it before following me. I reached the water's edge, gasping. The reflection of the fire danced across the surface like liquid gold. I looked down, then froze. The water wasn't clear anymore. It was black, thick, shimmering like oil. And in that reflection, I saw movement, ripples spreading outward, slow, deliberate, like something waking beneath. No, not something. Someone. Because as I leaned closer, the face that looked back wasn't mine. It was Glenn Walters. Smiling. Then the world went white as the barn exploded,